Hi, my name's Leighton Jin. I'm the Director of Development for the American Documentary and Animation Film Festival, also known as AMDOX. We have a very special guest, Mr. William Simpson. He's the Wild Horse. He's of the Wild Horse Fire Brigade, and the film that he's in is Horse of Nature, which will be at this year's AMDOX. William, can you talk to me? So this film is about the wildfires that you experienced. Can you talk to me about the wildfire that engulfed your area, your community?
Certainly. So in 2018, July 5th, a fire broke out on the west side of the internet of I-5 up here in Henley Hornbrook. So we're just like 15 miles south of the Oregon border at Henley Hornbrook on I-5, and that's just a little bit north of Wairika, California. The fire was 38,000 acres of grass and brush, and it was moving very quickly, very similar to the Palisades fire, and it was threatening the pristine old growth forest known as the Cascade Siskiyou National Monument and the college town of Ashland, which has Southern Oregon University.
Hmm. Well, that's and like you said, it's very similar. It's a very timely topic. From that fire, what did you learn, and what did that lead to?
Well, I've been up here. I grew up in the area, and I've been studying the wild horses in the area here since 2014. And we teach wild horse ecology with California State University, Sacramento here. And it was interesting because Colorado College came down in May of 2018, 2 months before the fire, and we actually did a documentary about my theory that these large-bodied herbivores could reduce enough of the grass and brush to really have an impact on how the fire behavior and
Hmm.
reduce the ferocity of these fires. Of course, fire is the amount of heat is a function of how much fuel. So when you have
Hmm.
prodigious grass and brush, you have a very serious problem. And so they filmed the whole thing, and then it's quite interestingly, 2 months later, here comes this big fire. And what we held out as this solution, these wild horses being a fire brigade, which is the namesake of our nonprofit, Wild Horse Fire Brigade, turned out to be actually empirically proven. When this fire
Hmm.
got to the area where the horses had grazed, I was on the fire line for 9 days with CAL FIRE as their technical advisor. And so I was boots on the ground during the fire in this wilderness area, watching the fire behavior as well as the behavior of the horses, who, quite interestingly, were not afraid of the fire. They're
Oh.
not like domestic horses. They didn't panic. I've got pictures of them grazing right in front of the fire coming, just calmly grazing, but they're wildlife, they've been here. I mean, they've been here 2 million years. I'm close to Mount Shasta. Mount Shasta was erupting 1 million years ago, so their ancestors were seeing lava and boulders flying through the sky. And so, it makes sense that they, understand fire. And so I was able to actually see and document the positive effect, the environmental effect that these horses had for helping to CAL FIRE suppress the fire.
And this was a couple. How many years ago? If you could remind me again, how many years ago did this happen?
Uh, yeah, Klamathon fire broke out on July 5th of 2018.
What kind of momentum have you had of expanding your program with the wild horses because obviously wildfires here in California has continually grown and it's gotten, very bad. There's a lot of fallout that we're all starting to pay more and more attention to. What kind of momentum have you guys gained in trying to establish more wild horses in very vulnerable areas?
Right. So, and that's really a great question, because what we're doing now is we're trying to do an outreach to various organizations, to CAL FIRE, to the state's governor, and explain to them that a mixed herbivory, so critters that eat grass and brush, are really the only cure that's scalable on the landscape, because we're talking 300 million acres in the western United States.
Hmm.
And grass and brush, it's interesting because I study wildfire quite a bit, as well as wild horse ecology and natural history. And then of course we're teaching wild horse ecology. But when you look at the data from the insurance industry and other data that's available, you find out that two-thirds of all wildfires are fueled by grass and brush, not by forest.
Hmm.
And 90% of the deaths and the economic damage come from grass and brush fires, not forest fires. So everybody's focused on forest fires, but disproportionately so. And it's kind of like having a boat at sea, and you got a 1 inch hole that's putting water in the boat, but then you got this 6 inch hole. Which hole do you fix first? Well, the big one, obviously. So, people are overlooking grass and brush. And the reason being is I think that the state agencies cannot field a genuine solution. So they don't want to talk about it. It's a very embarrassing situation because prescribed fire doesn't scale. You can't scale prescribed burning, and they got a lot of new terms for it because they're trying to rebrand it and sell it ecocultural fire, this prescribed fire, and so forth. Um, are we going to burn 300 million acres every year? Because the grass comes back the following spring. You can burn off an acreage and it comes right back. So, and this toxic smoke, the smoke from the Klamathon fire killed my wife. It basically, the toxins, and it wasn't carbon monoxide poisoning, it was the toxins that are in the smoke that cause an autoimmune response. And now UCLA just put out a report last year. They did an 11-year study, and they found out that the toxins in wildfire smoke are killing 5,000 Californians prematurely every year. So over the 11-year study period that UCLA did, 55,000 Californians died prematurely from wildfire toxin, from the smoke, the toxins in this smoke, and the economic damage was $435 billion. So we need to pay attention to what we can do. Prescribed fire doesn't scale. We're not going to burn, California is 93 million acres, or what are we going to burn? And 20 million acres of that is remote wilderness full of fuel. What are we going to do? So we need a mixed herbivory. We could have goats in the,
Hmm.
in the urban areas easily, and goats
Hmm.
are effective. We have to be careful with ruminids because they digest the plant seeds. So in the areas where you're trying to protect certain flora, right, which
Hmm.
are important for other animals and the pollinators and all that. The bees need these flowering plants and grasses, obviously.
Hmm.
You don't want to use ruminant because they're very good digesters. They chew a cud, and so they burp up this cud out of their first chamber and they remasticate, so that destroys any seeds they ate. A horse
Mm.
doesn't do that. Horses have a
Mm.
single stomach. So, and
Mm.
there's been a lot of university studies, horses basically poop out 90% of the seeds they eat grow. So their
Oh.
nature is reseeders. They walk around, and it's kind of like a good lawn. If you ever watch somebody who has a really nice lawn, what
Hmm.
do? They cut it, they fertilize it, and they
Hmm.
reseed it. That's
Right.
exactly what a horse does. And so that's why in certain areas horses are great, up in the Malibu Mountains and the San Gabriel Mountains, places. There's a lot of places we can put them in the areas where you don't want erosion to happen. You want it mowed down, but you want it reseeded because that roots are what stabilizes soil when the winter rains come.
Hmm.
So, and prescribed burning doesn't do that. When you burn, um, not only is it not scalable, but when you burn, you damage the seed bank, which are the seeds on the ground that haven't germinated yet.
Mm.
And then don't have plants when the rains come. What happens? You have catastrophic erosion. I mean, we saw during the Thomas Fire in Montecito by Santa Barbara there. I mean, that mudslide that came down killed 28 people. Four children were never found.
Hmm.
I mean, I study wildfires, so I know the data on the different fires. So we're offering a solution that saves our solution for this problem would
Hmm.
save taxpayers probably 10 to 20 billion dollars a year because we have 70,000 wild horses right now that have been rounded up and put into government holding, and
Mm.
they're sterilized. The stallions are castrated, the mares are sterilized, and they're just sitting there. And you and I and other taxpayers are paying $150 million a year to feed them grass in a FEMA camp. It's ridiculous.
Right.
So, we built America off the backs of these animals. I mean, if there was ever a mammal, bison
Hmm.
came here over Thuringia 200,000 years ago. Horses have been here 2 million years. What's more
Right.
native, a horse
Right.
or a bison?
Right.
So,
Why is there resistance to this? It sounds like a solution with a lot of positive uh just a lot of positive outcomes and multiple reasons. Why has it been so slow, and why has there been resistance to even to bring it on?
well, the positive environmental impact of these horses is very evident, but
Hmm.
because they're currently managed on public land by the Bureau of Land Management, the same public land is under economic pressure from major corporations because they want to use that land for other things: gas, oil, mineral extraction, and livestock production.
Hmm.
So the horses are in the way for all
Mm.
of these other things people want to do, and they're a non-commercial herbivore.
Mm.
So in other words, you can't hunt them. They're not, the hunting industry has no interest,
Hmm.
and you can't slaughter and sell them because these are federally protected animals, because they're part of our heritage. They're American
Right.
heritage horses. So what they're doing is they're just rounding them up, and then they make the land free for, more available for all of this corporate development and livestock. And, when you have horses in areas where there's livestock that are trying to do livestock production,
Mhm.
basically create meat and other livestock products, they're competing for the same water and grass. So they get
Right.
removed. But there's a better model. The BLM is so limited on their thought process, they don't realize we don't have to put them into jail in this government incarceration. We can move them into areas where they provide positive environmental benefits.
Hmm.
And so this is a new idea. I mean, you see how slow government is. It's usually private industry that is on the cutting edge of thinking and development, and then the government finally comes along and adopts some of those methods. Well,
Right.
we're thinking out of the box here because we see the value proposition of moving them, and you save the feed, and then immediately, by taking them out of the government holding, we save 150 million in feeding them, and then you put them into the appropriate areas, and then if they even just affect catastrophic fire by 2 or 3%, we're
Hmm.
talking over $1 billion a year. You look at fires in California, okay? I mean, we're looking at, some of these years we're approaching $100 billion in damage. I mean, the
Hmm.
Palisades fire, some people are saying that that's going to be what? I've seen numbers as high as $300 billion in damages in
Yeah.
California and Los Angeles. So,
Right.
I mean, we're on our way potentially to $1 trillion wildfire year in California. So if you move these horses into like Los Padres Forest, the San Gabriel Mountains, the Santa Monica Mountains, the Malibu, I mean, there's places where we can put them up here where I am in Six
Hmm.
Rivers National Forest, and they make a tiny dent, that tiny dent, that reducing the frequency and the intensity and the size of fire, which they
Hmm.
do. We know empirically from what happened up here during the Klamathon fire,
Hmm.
that we can save taxpayers billions of dollars. So it's a cash positive way of saving our treasured American wild horses.
Does the insurance company ever come up to you, because this is a great solution, and obviously for these insurance companies, they're leaving California, which I'm sure that you leave a lot of money behind because these fires are just so expensive and out of control for their business plans. Have they ever reached out to you to talk about this? And because it seems like a solution for a lot of people.
It is, and you hit the nail right on the head, Leighton. Um, AM Best, which has been
Mhm.
around since 1897, they're insurance industry analysts and credit rating, right? So what they do is they look around for what the issues are, and they also do credit rating on insurance companies. And so
Mhm.
they're kind of the big deal in the insurance industry. It's the letters AM Best. And they
Mhm.
actually told of us when they heard about this, and they did their own documentary, an 8-minute documentary about what we're doing and about
Wow.
this plan. And of course, the other problem we have is we have a lot of momentum in making money on burning America. It's
Mm,
become basically they're monetizing wildfire now. You've got all these wildfire training schools. You've got, for instance, I'll give you a simple one of many, many examples I can make. Gates, big rubber
mm,
company. They make fan belts and hoses. Well, they sell miles and miles and miles of fire hose during every
mm.
fire. Because
Oh,
once you use the fire hose, you got to throw it away. You can't use it because they got that coating on them. It's kind of a cloth coating. You get one little cinder on there, it burns a little hole. That's it. That hose is done. So I mean, there's all these different companies that makes safety equipment. You name it. They're all monetizing wildfire. And
mm,
so now we have this big financial model
mm-hmm,
of supporting fire suppression instead of prevention. And it's
mm,
funny how the government uses the word suppression.
mm,
It sounds a little bit like prevention. It's not.
mm.
Suppression is firefighting. That's what that is. And they
Right,
don't want to talk about it. They don't like that word because that means
right.
oops, missed it. It got away. Now we got to deal with a disaster. We should be, instead of, you look at the U.S. Forest Service, 90% of their budget is spent on fire suppression. In other words, after we have a fire, they're firefighting. They spend 90% of their budget. And they spent 5% of their budget on prevention. And what are they doing? Prescribed fire, which is not scalable. You
Right,
can't burn. So, and on top
right.
of that, oh yeah, let's burn more and put more toxic smoke up and kill even more people. I mean, prescribed fire is a really bad prescription
Right.
for what's happened. And the reason we have the fire, Leighton, is because California has a collapsed herbivory. I can show you the graphs, but over the last 30 years, our
Hmm.
population of deer has collapsed because it's
Mm.
been poorly. We're down 2 million deer and elk in California.
Oh
2
boy.
million. And 2 million deer and elk eat 3 million tons of grass and brush. And that's what's on fire. It's no longer grazed, so it's sitting there in a hotter, drier climate because of climate change. That's how climate change affects the fires. Because you
Right.
have the herbivories gone, you got all this grass and brush ungrazed, and so it gets drier sooner, stays drier longer, opens this window way up for a
Hmm.
catastrophe. And
Wow.
and and science shows if you restore the herbivory, you decrease the frequency, intensity, and size of fire. So this is an easy thing to do, but we have to separate the greed and the drive to monetize a disaster
Hmm.
and put all that preventing the
Hmm.
disaster. And that's what we're about. Wild Horse Fire Brigade, The Horse of Nature, the film, I
Hmm.
think is very timely because we're explaining to people that the impact is the environmental impact is horrific.
Yeah.
And then for every acre of forest that burns or land that burns, you lose 20 to 80 animals. All these
Yeah.
little critters, are being
Right.
killed. And then the human impact and the financial impact and the economic impacts, but it's also exponential.
Hmm.
When somebody dies from
Hmm.
wildfire smoke, um, it affects family trees. Everybody is hit with that grief. Everybody's
Hmm.
hit with that suffering. It's
Hmm.
not just one person died. It's
Right.
everybody gets impacted by that.
Hmm.
And so there's things we can do right now. And so the key right now is to get the word out that there is a
Hmm.
solution. It's free. That's what, see, you can't, people don't like free solutions. It's kind of like homeopathic medicine. The big pharmacy doesn't like, they
Right.
want a patent thing they can sell. See,
Right.
and we can really do this. We can put goats in the right places. We put horses in the right places. And I'm not saying I'm against livestock grazing either. In the right areas, that makes sense too.
Hmm.
So so we do this mixed herbivory. We
Hmm.
basically, and the horses can be kind of a stopgap for part of the missing deer herd in California. We've got these 70,000 horses in a corral, and the
Hmm.
government's charging it from there. Let's put them out there. Let them do their jobs. They were doing it for millions of years before we all showed up here in North America. So,
Hmm.
the settlers, when we showed up, we started killing everything in sight back in the 16th century. So,
Hmm.
we took buffalo. There was 60 million buffalo. We took them down to 500. I mean, who does that? It's ridiculous. We did the same thing with wild horses. There was millions of horses. Even in the early 1900s, Leighton, there was
Hmm.
3 million horses in America. 3 million
Mhm.
wild horses. Now we have a lot of domestic horses, which are
Right.
different.
Right.
They're afraid of fire. They see fire, they panic. They can't eat the same things a wild horse can eat.
Right.
If a domestic would die if they were out
Hmm.
here in the wilderness where I am, our herd of 200 horses have been here since Sir Francis Drake saw their ancestors in 1580. When Sir
Hmm.
Francis Drake our coast, he saw these horses, and he was on
Hmm.
a military mission. Queen Elizabeth wanted to settle the Pacific Northwest in the 16th century, and so he was on a mission, and he came right up here where I am in the Oregon-California border, saw the
Hmm.
indigenous people living with the horses, and of
Hmm.
course that's 80 years after Columbus first saw America, so they weren't reintroduced Spanish horses; they were
Right.
post-Ice Age horses in North America,
Right.
and I mean, we just have to be a little bit smarter and less greedy.
Yeah.
That's all we
Well, cynical guy means like, oh, good luck. I mean, I love your solution. I've been starting to hear more and more about these solutions for wildfires. Obviously, it's growing. Let's get to the movie a little bit. You talked about there was a movie you guys did in 2018. How is Horse of Nature? How's this one a little bit different? When were you approached, and what are some of the things you can say about this film?
sure. So, the first fire back in May of 2018, Fuel, Fire, and Wild Horses was a Colorado College graduate thesis project.
Hmm.
So, this project was the director and the producer, Audie Carlisle,
Hmm.
um, heard about what we were doing. She's local. She's a local, homegrown Mount Shasta lady,
Hmm.
self-taught, and she has a very interesting perspective on the world. It's because she wasn't influenced so much by the normal way you would learn to become a director and a film producer. She
Hmm.
has a very unusual way of looking at the world, which I thought was very cool. And when she
Hmm.
started talking to us about, she heard about the fire and about my wife being killed and all that, and then the people down in Henley Hornbrook that suffered, it burned. That town got incinerated. I
Hmm.
mean, that fire just rolled over that town.
Yeah.
And we're a tiny little community. We're 300 people up here in the mountains,
Hmm.
and so we're trying to come back from that. And so she
Yeah.
heard about the struggles, and so she came up here in the wilderness, and started, interviewing over the course of, you know, back and forth, maybe it was almost a year in
Hmm. Yeah.
progress. Um, and put it all together, the interviews and coming up and seeing the horses and what they do. And but it was an interesting process because I'd been interviewed before and I'd been filmed before, but her perspective, I think, was quite unusual because it's more of how maybe you or me were visiting somebody else and how we would see them as just instead of like a movie producer or a director, looking at it from more of there's more humanity involved, I guess, or more compassion in
Hmm.
how she looked at it, and the
Hmm.
struggles of the community to recover. Because these fires, they just devastate you. I mean,
Yeah.
wipes out your whole environment
Right.
and everybody's impacted. Everybody, the people up here, most of these people have PTSD from these fires.
Oh, wow. Yeah. It's, I mean, it's tragic, and unfortunately, it's been becoming more common. There's so many fires in this state that have been growing, and then I've just been sitting there watching insurance companies, leave the state because it's getting so bad. And this is such a great solution and just a great direction, and I hope people pay attention. Can you give me the your website and where people could donate or support you?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Leighton. Yeah, it's just like it sounds, wildhorsefirebrigade.org.
Okay.
And if they just Google Wild Horse Fire Brigade, we usually come right up at the top.
Hmm.
And we are a 501(c)(3). We're an all volunteer nonprofit.
Hmm.
Nobody's being paid to do this. We're doing it because it saves lives.
Hmm. Well, I applaud you for what you're doing. I hope more people listen. I hope people amplify your voice, and let's try to do some more stuff and get people to notice. And this sounds like such a great solution and something we should be doing. and I'm grateful that you guys are a part of this film and will be part of our film festival.
Well, thank you, and we're very appreciative that it was officially selected. That's quite an honor.
Well, it's going to be an honor for us to show it. Just as a reminder, our film festival is March 27th through 31st at the Palm Springs Cultural Center. Passes are available right now. Check out our website. You'll see the link on the description. Bill, thank you so much. I really appreciate taking the time to talk to me and enlightening me. And like again, I applaud the work that you're doing. And like I said, I hope we can bring more awareness and have people amplify your voice so we can get some more positive, uh, just more positive progress going towards this.
Thank you, Leighton. I appreciate it.